Hello everyone, Rob Pilger here, and I'm going to talk to you tonight about something I'm really big on, is film study. You know, I have my young fighters, young amateurs, we break down great punchers like Gerald McClellan, Terry Norris of the 1990s. You really got the earliest you can go back to is the 1990s, really, to see truly explosive power punches. Pros aren't pros nowadays. Anybody knows about boxing knows that pros aren't pros anymore. They're slapping with their punches, because that's what they're taught in the amateurs. Pros aren't pros anymore because they're not coming out of the amateurs. Good fighters aren't coming to the amateurs anymore. Good fighters aren't coming to the amateurs anymore because they're teaching that bullshit Olympic slap-ass style. Boxing isn't boxing anymore. It's a fucking lie. So I'm not playing that game, though. And there's a lot of other coaches out there that aren't playing that game either. There are a lot of other good coaches out there doing that good job because they know the truth. They look at fighters like these guys back in the day, in the 1990s. Gerald McClellan. Look where the power comes from with Gerald. How many fighters nowadays do you really see punching like this? Look at that dude. Look at that dude stretch when he hits him. He's stretched. He's out. He's snoring. But look at the power. How many fighters do you really see punching like this? They don't punch like that because they're not taught to punch like that. They're not taught to punch like that. They don't work on the punches like that in the gym. Look at that left hook to the body, how he finishes it up. A lot of fighters don't even mix their punches up like that anymore. Body work's a lost art nowadays. Pros aren't pros anymore. The films don't lie. Seeing's believing here. This is Gerald McClellan, one of the pound-for-pound hardest punchers ever. Look at the leverage. Look at the rotation. You want to know where the power comes from in boxing, striking sports? Right there. Here's another guy. Good fighter. Whoops. Really good fighter. Terry Norris. Give me 1 second. Very explosive. One of the most explosive fighters in the 1990s. Look at the power. Look at the speed of the combinations. Look how he mixes them up. Look at what happens to the guys when he hits them. That force. Look at the aggression in there. He's not running around the ring. It was kill or be killed with him. He went out on his shield fighting. Amateurs, they don't have a pro fight coming up. They're amateurs, but still, they need to see where the power comes from. I got to adapt their style a little bit to fit the amateur scoring system. They're not international, Olympic style, locally and nationally here, but it's more of a flurry style. But I'm not really. I teach a pro style. I got fighters that want to fight pro, as they mature, and I'm not gonna. It's harder to make a good pro. Look at what's his name, Andre, that came out of the last Olympics, and Andre Ward, excuse me. It took him several years to really, and he's still not really that solid of a pro technically. It took him a lot of years to unwind all that dumb shit that he was taught in the amateurs just to win. He did a great job winning the gold. That's something very wonderful to be proud about, but that doesn't guarantee you pro success. A lot of those guys are making a hard transition. And Andre Jarrell was another one who was won the silver medal at Olympics. He's having a hard time attracting a fan base in the pros. Nobody wants to watch his fucking running and slapping style. Amateur success doesn't guarantee pro success like it did in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, where fighters were taught how to fight. Where fighters were taught how to fight, really learned the elements of boxing, the fundamentals of boxing that carried over to the pros. That's my point. I teach a pro style here, but I teach my fighters how to fight. And you have to get them to watch. We even go back to guys like, Willie Pep for defense, Archie Moore. You can find some footage of Charlie Burley, Ezra Charles, guys like that, the Ghetto Wizard, guys like that, very fast, Benny Leonard, the Ghetto Wizard. That's who you got to study, not guys like Floyd Mayweather and Roy Jones. So I'm not ever giving up on boxing. We're building a solid program here. We're working our asses off, and I'm attracting fighters in here. And fighters are staying in here because I'm not running them off by rushing them too quick. I'm teaching them how to fight, and word's getting out. So as young coaches, that's what we need to do. We need to do a better job, to build a solid amateur program so we have better pros. Riddick Bowe, Lennox Lewis came from a solid amateur program, heavyweights in the 80s. In the 90s, Mayweather and the young De La Hoya could fight, before he sold out, after he made millions. And the same thing with Floyd. Even Vernon Forrest, a great pro fighter, had a solid amateur background, but they weren't taught that run and slap ass style. We need to keep teaching these amateurs how to really fight. And that's what we need to do to really keep boxing going and creating more solid pros. They're born in the amateurs. Basically what we need to do is do a better job of bringing the sweet science back to boxing.